A peasant woman found him injured and holding his twin babies. She didn't know he was the prince. Before we begin this beautiful period romance story, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love knowing where you're joining me from. The forest had always been Elise's refuge. It was the one place where no one ordered her to hurry, no overseer shouted about quotas of grain, no collector stood at the door with folded arms and a list. Among the trees, she could almost forget the weight of taxes and hunger. She knew every narrow path, every fallen trunk, every hollow where mushrooms grew after rain. That morning, the air was still. Not cold, not warm, just heavy, as if the sky were thinking. She shifted the bundle of branches on her shoulder and muttered to herself, half out of habit, "If I bring enough today, perhaps I can trade for a little flour. If he is in a generous mood," she added, thinking of the baker who never truly was. A crow called from somewhere above, then fell silent. Even the rustle of leaves seemed to hold its breath. Elise paused and frowned. The road lay somewhere beyond the line of thicker trees. Usually the muffled sounds of carts and voices floated faintly to her, like a reminder that the world continued beyond her hidden paths. Today there was nothing. No wheels, no merchants shouting. Only that strange, stretched silence. She adjusted the shawl around her shoulders and listened harder. At first she heard only her own breathing and the small creaks of the wood piled in her arms. Then, faint, almost imaginary, came a new sound, a tiny whimper, the kind a child makes when it is too tired to cry properly. She straightened, heart jumping. "Who would bring a child out here?" she whispered. The whimper came again, followed by a soft, hiccuping sob. It was close, but not on the main path. It came from deeper inside the forest, where even the woodcutters seldom went. Fear pricked at the back of her neck. People had been nervous lately. Rumors of disagreements in the city, people taking sides, arguing over bread and laws. She had heard whispers of officials traveling more often, of important men moving from one estate to another. Perhaps it is just a family lost, she told herself. Perhaps they took the wrong turn. The thought of a wandering child struggling alone in the trees pushed away her hesitation. She set down her bundle of branches, wiped her hands quickly on her skirt, and walked toward the sound. "Hello?" she called softly. "Is someone there?" No answer. Only the whimper, urgent now. She picked her way around brambles and low branches. A bird startled from a bush and flew off with a flap of wings. Her foot caught on a root, and she stumbled. Catching herself with one hand against a narrow tree trunk, she hissed in annoyance and kept going. The trees thinned a little ahead. In a small hollow near an old oak, she saw a shape that did not belong in the forest at all. A man sat slumped against the oak's thick trunk. His clothes were plainly finer than anything she owned. A dark coat, now dusty and creased, a linen shirt, open at the throat, the collar wrinkled, one stocking torn. His shoes, though scuffed, had once been well made. His head tipped back awkwardly against the bark, eyes half closed. His face was pale beneath a faint sheen of sweat, and there was a small, angry mark at his temple, the kind one might get from a heavy jolt or a fall. But it was not the man who held her frozen. It was what he held. Two small children, no more than 2 years old, clung to him. One on each side, their little arms wrapped around his coat. Their cheeks were wet. Their wide eyes stared at her, dark and frightened. The little boy, she thought he must be the boy from the cut of the hair, let out a choked cry when her shadow fell over them. The other child, a girl with curls flattened against her damp forehead, buried her face in the man's shoulder and trembled. Elise's heart squeezed. "Oh," she breathed. "Oh, you poor things." The man stirred at her voice. His lashes fluttered. He tried to focus, but his gaze slid slightly to the side. He exhaled slowly, as if even that cost him effort. "Who is there?" he asked, his voice hoarse and low. A woman," she replied, absurdly aware of how plain she must look to him, with her rough skirt and patched sleeves. "My name is Elise. I was gathering wood." He blinked as though trying to clear fog from his mind. His hand tightened protectively around both children. "You must not be here," he said. "It is not safe." She almost laughed. Not safe. As if any place in France were truly safe for a girl alone with no money. "For them it is not," he insisted, as if he had read her thought. "There were men on the road. They were asking questions. The coachman lost his nerve. The horses, we were thrown. I could not wait to see what they wanted. I took the children and came into the trees. I thought we would be far enough by now. He stopped, breath catching. His hand went automatically to his temple, then to his chest, as if checking whether everything was still in place. Elise looked around, half expecting to see a coach hidden behind a bush, but there was nothing. Only bent grass where someone had forced their way through quickly. "You fell?" she asked. "There was a jolt. The carriage struck something. I did not—" "It is all confused." His words trailed off. "I needed to get them away. That is all I knew." He lifted his head to look at her properly. For a moment their eyes met, and she was struck by the clarity there, even through the exhaustion. He was not drunk. He was not raving. He was simply worn down to the bone. "What is your name?" she asked, more gently now. "Louis," he replied after a pause. Then, as if remembering something, he added quickly, "Louis Martin. From the city." The surname sounded like one people used when they did not wish to be identified. Too common, too conveniently plain. But she had heard enough stories of travelers who did not want their business repeated in taverns. "And the children?" she asked. He looked at them with a tenderness that made her chest ache. "My son, Henri," he said, nodding toward the boy who clung stubbornly to his coat. "And my daughter, Claire." Henri sniffled, rubbing his nose with the back of his small hand. Claire lifted her face just enough to look at Elise with solemn eyes, then hid again. "You said it is not safe," Elise said slowly. "Is someone chasing you?" "They were not chasing," he answered carefully. "They were stopping all who passed on the road, asking where they came from, asking who they supported. It was unpleasant. The coachman thought it might worsen. Then there was the jolt. The carriage tipped. People shouted." He stopped again, his brow furrowed, as if the memory pained him. Not physically, but in a deeper way. "I heard one of them say something about taking advantage of the confusion," he continued quietly. "I did not want my children caught in questions, accusations, any of it. So I ran. Perhaps I was foolish. I did not think how far it was." Elise took in the smudges on his coat, the grass seed stuck to his stockings, the reddened skin on his hands where the little ones had gripped him tightly. "How long have you been here?" she asked. He looked up at the light between the branches, as if trying to guess the hour. "I am not sure," he said. "Time feels strange. The sun was high when we left the road. It is lower now." I kept walking. When they grew too tired, I carried them. When they cried, I begged them to be quiet. I did not want their voices to carry. He gave a small, broken laugh. In the end, they stopped crying and simply clung to me. That was worse somehow. Elise swallowed. She knew something of fear that made sounds disappear. "Are you hurt?" she asked. He hesitated, then shrugged one shoulder. "My head aches. My ankle twists if I put weight on it. It is nothing serious. The worst is that I cannot stand long enough to take another step with them." He looked at the children again, and guilt flickered across his face, raw and unguarded. "I tried," he whispered. The words pricked at her. She could not leave him like this, not with two babies leaning on him as if he were the last tree in a flood. "Can you stand if I help you?" she asked. He drew a breath, squared his shoulders as much as he could. "I can try," he said. She walked closer, careful not to startle the little ones. Henri watched her as if ready to burst into tears at any move toward his father. She sank to her knees in front of them. "I am not going to hurt you," she said softly. "My name is Elise. I live not far from here. A small cabin. It is nothing grand, but there is a bed and water and a fire." Claire peeked out again, eyes wide. "Fire," she whispered, her voice tiny. "Yes," Elise said, managing a smile. "Fire to warm your hands, and perhaps a little soup if I can manage it. Would you like that?" Claire looked at her father. He nodded slowly, though his jaw tightened in pain. "We will go with her," he said, his voice gentle for the children. "Just for a little while, until Papa can walk properly again. All right?" Henri did not answer. He simply pressed his face against Louis's arm and held tight. Elise slid one arm behind Louis's back and offered her other hand. "On the count of 3, she said quietly. 1, 2, 3. He pushed with his good leg. She pulled. For a second she did not think he would make it, but then he rose, wavering like a tree in wind. The twins clung to his coat. His face flushed, then drained, but he stayed upright. "Can you take Claire?" he asked, holding the little girl out toward her. Claire hesitated, trembling. "Papa," she whispered. "I will be right here," Louis assured her. "You will help me, ma petite. You will help me walk." She nodded and let Elise lift her. The weight was more than Elise expected. Claire was not heavy for her age, but Elise was already tired from carrying wood. Still, she set the child on her hip, adjusted her grip, and breathed through the strain. Henry refused to let go of his father, so Louis kept him settled on his own hip, gritting his teeth as he tested his ankle. "This way," Elise said. "There is a path. It is narrow, but we can manage." They began to move slowly through the trees. Each step sent a small jolt through Louis's body. Elise heard his breath catch once or twice, but he did not complain. The twins' heads rested against their shoulders, the sudden movement rocking them into a dazed silence. "How far is it?" Louis asked after a few moments. "Not very," she said. 10 minutes, perhaps. 15 like this." "I can bear 15, he murmured. They walked in silence for a while. Branches brushed against Elise's hair. Her arms began to ache. She shifted Claire to the other side and tried to ignore the burning in her muscles. "You live alone?" Louis asked, if only to distract himself. "Yes," she said. "My parents are gone. My brother went to the city years ago. He writes when he can. Not often. The cabin was my grandmother's. No one cares about it. They care only that I pay what is required." He nodded, understanding more than she said. "You are kind to take in strangers," he said quietly. She gave a small snort. "You are a man who can hardly walk and 2 children who can hardly stand," she replied. "You are not dangerous." "You do not know that," he said. "I know enough," she answered. "Your hands tremble when they cry. That tells me who you are more than your name does." He looked at her, surprised. A faint, tired smile touched his mouth. "You are observant, Mademoiselle Elise." "I have to be," she said simply. They stepped over a fallen branch. Henri tightened his grip on Louis's coat and whimpered. "We are almost there," Louis told him. "Be brave a little longer, Henri." At last the trees opened to a small clearing. In the middle stood a tiny cabin, its roof a little uneven, its single window cloudy with age. A thin trail of smoke rose from the chimney. Elise had banked the fire before leaving, as she always did. "It is not much," she said, suddenly ashamed, "but it is dry, and no one comes here unless they are lost." "It is more than we had an hour ago," Louis replied. "To us it is a palace." She flushed and turned away quickly, annoyed with herself for caring about his opinion. She pushed open the door with her shoulder and stepped inside. The room was small, a hearth on one side, a narrow bed pushed against the far wall, a rough table with 2 stools, a chest at the foot of the bed. Everything was worn from use, but clean. She set Claire down on the bed. The little girl's eyes widened as she bounced slightly on the straw mattress. "So soft," Claire murmured. Henri looked longingly at the bed, then at his father. "Go on," Louis said, forcing a smile. Up you go. Elise hurried to take Henri from him, lifting the boy and placing him beside his sister. Both children sat, staring around as if they had stepped into another world. "You sit too," she said to Louis, "before your leg gives way." He did not argue. He eased himself down on the edge of the bed, then let out a quiet breath of relief. "Thank you," he said. "It is nothing," she answered. "Stay still. I will fetch water." She filled a bowl from the earthen jar near the door and brought it to the bed, setting it on the chest. Then she tore a strip from an old linen cloth and dipped it in the water. "May I look at your head?" she asked. He touched the place himself, winced slightly and nodded. She dabbed gently at his temple, wiping away dirt and dried sweat. Up close she saw that the mark was not deep. A bump, perhaps, enough to disorient him, but not break him. Relief loosened a knot she had not known was in her chest. "You will have a bruise," she said, "but it will fade." "I have had worse from falling off a horse as a boy," he said lightly. "You fell off horses often, Monsieur Martin?" she asked. "Too often," he replied, a hint of amusement in his voice. "My tutor despaired." His choice of words again. Tutor. Not everyone had such a thing. Elise tucked the observation away silently. She rinsed the cloth and looked at his ankle. The stocking had stretched oddly. "May I?" she asked. "If you must," he said with a sigh. She removed his shoe carefully. Henri watched with great interest. "Does it hurt?" the little boy asked. "A little," Louis said. "Papa is brave," Claire announced. "Your papa is foolish," Louis corrected with a soft smile. "He should have rested earlier." Elise pulled back the stocking enough to see his ankle. It was swollen and slightly discolored, but not mangled. "You should not walk on this tomorrow," she said. "I must," he replied instinctively. "You must not," she said firmly. "If you do, you will not walk at all the next day." He met her eyes and seemed to recognize that arguing would change nothing. "Very well," he said quietly. "For today I will accept defeat." She wrapped the ankle with another strip of cloth, not too tight, then pulled the stocking back into place and set his shoe aside. "I have only one bed," she said then, suddenly aware of the problem. "You and the children must take it. I will sleep near the fire." "I cannot take your bed," he objected. "You can, and you will," she replied. "You can barely stand." "Do not argue." He looked as if he wanted to argue anyway, but his body clearly had other opinions. He leaned back carefully, shifting so that Henri and Claire nestled against him. The children relaxed at once, their faces smoothing. Within minutes, Henri's eyes drooped. Claire tucked her thumb into her mouth and blinked slowly. Elise turned to the hearth. She added a few of the smaller branches she had collected earlier and coaxed the embers into a small, steady flame. The warmth crept through the room, gentle and comforting. "I have some bread," she said over her shoulder, "and a small piece of cheese. It is not much. We can share it. Later I will make soup from lentils. It will be thin, but it will be warm," Louis answered softly. "You have already given us more than I could have hoped for." She shrugged, though he could not see it. "You would have done the same if you found me under a tree with 2 babies, she said. He was silent for a moment. "I hope I would have," he said. "I like to believe so, but I do not know. Fear makes fools of us all." She cut the bread, measuring each slice with care. One for each child, one for Louis, one for herself. She gave the children their pieces first. They took them with wide-eyed seriousness, nibbling as if they did not quite trust that the food was real. "Say thank you, children," Louis reminded them gently. "Thank you," Claire murmured. Henri mumbled something around his mouthful that might have been thanks. "You are welcome," Elise said. She handed Louis his slice and set her own aside until everyone else had eaten. She watched them as they chewed, making sure the children did not choke in their haste. The simple act of sharing bread filled the small cabin with a strange intimacy. This man and his children, who that morning had been nowhere near her thoughts, now sat on her bed as if they had always belonged there. "Do you have family?" Louis asked after a while. "Only a brother in the city," she said. "He left to look for work years ago. Sometimes he sends a letter. Once he sent a scarf in winter. The wool was so fine I kept it wrapped away until the cold was unbearable." "And your parents?" he asked. "Gone," she said quickly. "It was some time ago." He did not press. She was grateful. "And you, Monsieur Martin?" she asked. "Is there someone who will look for you, besides those men on the road?" "There are people who expect me in certain places," he said slowly. "But whether they know where I am now, I cannot say." "Your wife?" she asked, before she could stop herself. A shadow crossed his face. "Their mother is no longer with us," he said. She regretted the question at once. "I am sorry," she said quietly. "So am I," he replied. The children had slowed their eating. Claire leaned into his side, her eyes closing. Henri's head drooped, then jerked up, then drooped again. Louis stroked their hair absent-mindedly. "The forest is dangerous at night," he said after a time. "Are you sure we are safe here?" "No one comes this way," she said. "The main path is over there, beyond the thicket. Even the woodcutters stay on that side. They say this part of the forest has bad luck." "And you?" he asked. "Do you believe that?" She looked around her small home, the cracked pot by the hearth, the worn blanket on the bed, the single window that looked only onto trees. "I believe in what I can touch," she said. "The rest is for others." Outside, the light dimmed. The patch of sky visible through the window shifted from pale to grey. Elise lit a small candle on the table and watched the flame steady itself. "For you should rest," she said to Louis. "Your head will feel worse if you stay awake." "I'm afraid to close my eyes," he admitted in a low voice. "Every time I do, I am back on the road. I hear them shouting. I hear the horses. I think I have lost them." He looked at the sleeping children and swallowed hard. "But you have not lost them," she said. "They are here. They are safe. For now," he murmured. "They will sleep better if you do," she insisted. "Children feel what we feel. If you are tense, they will be restless." He smoothed Claire's hair once more. "You are very sure of your opinions, Mademoiselle Elise," he said. "When a woman has no property, no title, and no brothers nearby to speak for her, she learns to be sure of herself," she answered. "Or she is eaten alive." He nodded slowly, considering that. "Very well," he said at last. "I will try." She spread her thin blanket on the floor near the hearth and lay down on her side, facing the fire. The warmth kissed her face. She could hear the soft breaths of the children, the slight rustle as Louis shifted carefully to make them comfortable. For a while, the only sounds were the crackle of burning wood and the occasional sigh from the bed. Her thoughts wandered despite herself. Who exactly was this man? Why had those officials on the road frightened him so badly? Why had he chosen to flee instead of answering their questions? She told herself it was none of her concern. She had taken them in for one night. That was all. In the morning, the world could claim him again. Her eyelids grew heavy. The fatigue of the day settled over her like another blanket. She drifted toward sleep, somewhere between the warmth of the fire and the steady breathing behind her. Then, just as the last light faded from the window and the cabin seemed to sink into complete quiet, a sudden, firm knock sounded at the door. The knock came again, harder this time. Elise sat up so fast the blanket twisted around her legs. The fire threw flickering light on the door. Her heart pounded against her ribs. Louis also woke. She heard the rustle of straw, a soft sound as he turned. "What is it?" he whispered. "Someone at the door," she murmured back. Claire stirred with a little sigh. Henri rubbed his eyes. The knock sounded a third time, not frantic, just firm. Whoever stood there expected an answer. Elise scrambled to her feet. She smoothed her hair quickly and glanced around the room. The bowl, the crusts of bread, the extra shoes near the bed. Too many signs. "Lie back," she whispered to Louis. "Pull the blanket over the children." "I can help," he began. "No. You cannot walk," she said. "Do as I say." He hesitated, then obeyed. He eased himself down, drawing the thin blanket up to hide their faces. The children pressed close under his arms, their little shapes barely visible. Elise crossed to the door. She laid her hand on the latch and took one deep breath. "Who is there?" she called. "Do not be foolish, girl. It is Madame Fournier," came the answer. "Open the door. I have news." Relief rushed through Elise so quickly, her knees went weak. She lifted the latch and pulled the door open. Madame Fournier stood on the step, wrapped in a heavy shawl. Her cheeks were pink from the air, and her eyes sharp as ever. She peered around Elise as if she owned the place. "You took your time," the older woman said. "Were you asleep like a cat?" "Yes," Elise said quickly. "I had a tiring day." Madame Fournier sniffed and pushed past her into the room without waiting for invitation. She always did. The older woman's gaze swept over the space. Her frown deepened when she saw the candle, the extra cup on the table, the blankets in disarray on the floor. "Your house looks as if a storm passed through," she remarked. "You have not grown lazy, I hope." "I had to bring in wood," Elise said. "I had not yet tidied." She tried to angle her body so that Madame Fournier would not look too closely at the bed. Louis lay motionless, only a dark shape behind the thin curtain she had hung from a string to divide the room. The children hid under the blanket like field mice. "What news?" Elise asked quickly. "You said you had news." Madame Fournier drew herself up a little, pleased to be asked. "The road near the village is in chaos," she said. "A carriage came through this morning. Not just any carriage, a fine one. It is said it belonged to someone close to the royal family. They were stopped and questioned by men from the other side. People watched from doorways. Some say there was pushing and shouting. No one agrees on the details, but the travelers did not reach the inn as expected. There is talk of missing passengers." "Missing?" Elise repeated, feeling the word settle over the room like a cloud. "Yes. They say someone important may have left the carriage before it entered the village," Madame Fournier went on. "No one knows if it was by choice. Now men are searching. They want to know who left, where they went, and whether anyone has seen strangers in the area." She paused, letting the words sink in. "They will ask questions," she added. Questions are never good for people like us. Elise forced herself to nod calmly. I saw no carriage, she said. I was in the forest. I know you were, Madame Fournier said. That is why I came. A girl who spends her days among trees might see things others do not. If you saw anyone, it would be wise to speak up. They say those who help will be rewarded. Rewarded by whom? Elise asked. The men on the road or the ones in the carriage? It seems no one agrees who holds favor these days. Madame Fournier clicked her tongue. You speak too freely, she scolded. If officials hear you, they will say you are stirring trouble. I stir nothing, Elise said. I only try to keep a roof over my head. Then make sure that roof does not cover anyone who brings you trouble, Madame Fournier replied. Her gaze shifted again, sharper now. She eyed the curtain, the extra shoes. Her brows lifted. You have visitors? She asked. Elise's stomach lurched. No, she said quickly. Only old clothes. I meant to mend them. Madame Fournier did not look convinced. She took a step closer to the bed. Elise's hand shot out to touch her arm. It is late, she said. You should be at home. Your joints ache when you stand in the damp air too long. You told me so yourself. The older woman hesitated. Her curiosity warred with her sense. That is true, she said grudgingly. But this is important, girl. Listen to me. The officials said anyone who hides strangers will be treated as an enemy, even if they claim not to know who they are. Do you understand? Yes, Elise said softly. I understand. For people like us, it is always easier for them to blame than to ask. Madame Fournier went on. There is no one to speak for us. Remember that. Be careful who you help. I help no one, Elise lied. You know I keep to myself. Madame Fournier studied her face, perhaps searching for a tremor or blush. Finding none, she finally nodded. Very well, she said. If you hear anything, tell me. I will know how to pass it along without drawing attention to you. You are too young to handle these matters. Thank you, Elise murmured. The older woman pulled her shawl tighter. Lock your door, she said. There are many strange things happening on the roads now. People talk of change, but change often falls hardest on our shoulders. With that she left, stepping out into the dim light. Elise closed the door behind her and leaned against it, letting her head fall back for a moment. From the bed came a soft whisper. She is gone, Louis asked. Yes, Elise said. For now. She crossed the room and pulled the curtain aside. Claire blinked up at her. Henri clung to his father's arm. They were stopped, Louis said quietly. On the road. The carriage. Yes, she answered. She says there is confusion. Missing passengers. Men looking for anyone who left the carriage. He closed his eyes briefly. I thought as much, he murmured. You did not tell me the carriage was a royal one, she said. It seemed unwise to mention it, he replied, and I did not wish to worry you more than necessary. You already worried me enough, she said. He opened his eyes again and studied her face. What will you do? He asked. Now that you know they are searching. What can I do? She said. Throw you into the forest. I am not a monster. His mouth curved slightly. No, he said. You are not. She sighed and moved away to the hearth. Rest, she said. The children need you calm. Days settled into a fragile pattern. In the mornings, Elise rose early and checked the edges of the clearing, making sure no one had wandered close in the night. She fetched water, lit the fire, and prepared whatever simple food she had left. Lentil soup, stale bread softened in warm milk. Occasionally a piece of root vegetable she had traded for in the village. Louis stayed mostly on the bed at first. His ankle throbbed when he tried to stand. He occupied the children with soft stories and simple games, tapping his fingers on the blanket and letting them try to catch his hand. Their laughter made the small cabin feel strangely full. You are good with them, Elise observed one morning as she chopped an onion. They are all I have, he replied. I used to think of duties in terms of documents and meetings. Now I think only of whether they slept, whether they ate, whether they smiled. Children will change a man, she said. Has that been your experience? He asked gently. She shook her head. No, I have none of my own, she said. But I have watched enough fathers in the village. Some soften, some do not. You are one of the softer ones. He smiled faintly. I hope that is a compliment. Of course it is, she said. When his ankle allowed, Louis insisted on helping. He could not walk far. but he sat at the table and mended a broken stool leg with surprising skill. He repaired the latch on the door so it would close more tightly. He even showed the children how to stack small pieces of firewood in neat lines, turning the chore into a game. "You have lived a comfortable life," Elise said one afternoon, as she watched him coax Henri to balance a piece of wood on another without letting it fall. "Yet you know how to mend furniture." "A comfortable life does not always mean an idle one," he replied. "I had a tutor who believed a man should know how to care for the things in his house. He said it kept the mind humble." "The men in the big house near the village do not mend anything," she said. "They send it to others, or throw it away." "They are fools, then," he said. "Careful," she warned. "Someone might hear you." He laughed softly. "Perhaps they should," he said. As his strength returned, so did the visits from the outside world. One afternoon, as Elise walked back from the well with 2 buckets, she saw dust on the path. It was not the light, uneven dust of a neighbor's steps. It was a more deliberate mark. She set the buckets down and listened. Voices, 2 of them, male, coming closer. Her heart quickened. She hurried to the cabin and pushed the door open. "Someone is coming," she hissed. Louis straightened on the bed. "Who?" he asked. "I do not know," she said, "but you must stay out of sight." He swung his legs off the bed. He could stand now, though, with a limp. "I will take the children behind the curtain," he said. "Close the window shutters. Make it look as it always does." She nodded and moved quickly. She pulled the wooden shutter over the small window, dimming the light. Louis gathered Henri and Claire, whispering to them to be very quiet. Their eyes were wide, but they did not cry. A sharp knock came at the door, just as he disappeared behind the curtain. Elise wiped her hands on her apron and opened the door a crack. A man stood outside, dressed in a plain but respectable coat. His hair was tidy. He carried a small stack of papers under one arm. His expression was politely distant. "Good day, mademoiselle," he said. "Good day," she replied cautiously. "I am here on behalf of the local office," he said. "We are reviewing records. We must ensure that all households are accounted for and that everyone contributes what is required. May I come in?" Her stomach knotted. She had seen him before in the village, the collector. He always spoke with the tone of someone doing a favor while counting coins. "My home is small," she said. "There is little to see." "All homes must be visited, small or large," he said smoothly. "It will not take long." He did not wait for invitation. He stepped inside, looking around with thinly veiled criticism. "So, this is where you hide yourself," he remarked. "I suppose it is convenient being so far from the village. No one to disturb you. No one to see whether you work as hard as you claim." "I work enough," she said. "You see the wood. I sell what I can, when the weather allows." "And yet you are still behind with payments," he said, flipping through his papers. "Elise, what is your surname again?" "Ah, yes. I recall now. Always promising to catch up. Always a few coins short." "I give what I have," she said, feeling heat rise in her cheeks. "Everyone says that," he replied. "Do you think the world can be run on promises and pity? Bread and roads and officials must be paid for. Even your king cannot live on air." She bit back a retort. It would do no good. "I will bring more next month," she said. "I have been unwell. My work slower." "You look well enough to me," he said, eyeing her from head to toe. "You are young and strong. There is no excuse." He walked farther into the room, studying the table, the extra cup, the curtain. "Have you live alone?" he asked casually. "Yes," she said. "No husband," he said. "No father, no brothers." "No," she replied. "Convenient," he said. "No one to hinder you. No one to question who comes and goes." Her jaw tightened. "No one to help when you demand more," she said. He turned, eyebrows lifting. "Are you complaining?" he asked. "I am stating a fact," she said quietly. He stepped closer, invading her space just enough to remind her that he could make her life harder with a word. "Take care how you speak," he said softly. "Gratitude would suit you better than defiance." He glanced toward the curtain again. "You sleep there?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "The bed is old. It creaks in storms. I prefer to be near the fire." He nodded slowly, as if he believed her, or perhaps as if he did not care enough to pursue it. "There are reports of strangers near the road," he said. important people who may have left their carriage unexpectedly. You have not seen anyone unusual in the forest. A squirrel that stole half my bread yesterday, she said. Does that count as unusual? He stared at her for a long moment, then gave a tight smile. You make jokes, he said. Very good. I hope your humor will remain when we speak again next month and you are still behind. He folded his papers and moved toward the door. Remember, he said, pausing with his hand on the latch, those who hide important people will share in their troubles. It is easier to collect from the poor, they have nowhere to run. With that he left. Elise closed the door, her hands shaking. Humiliation burned in her chest. She had done nothing wrong, yet he had spoken to her as if she were a lazy child. She stood there for a moment, breathing hard. Behind the curtain, Louis's voice came quietly. May we come out? She swallowed and nodded, then realized he could not see her. Yes, she said. He stepped out with the children. Both twins watched her, puzzled by the tension in the room. You heard all that, she said, not quite able to meet his eyes. Yes, he replied softly. I am nothing to him, she said abruptly. Not a person, only a name on his paper, a burden, a problem to fix with scolding. You are not nothing, Louis said. To him I am, she insisted. It does not matter that I work, that I drag wood until my arms ache. I will always be the girl in the forest who is a few coins short. He looked at her with an expression she could not name. Regret, perhaps, shame. There are many like him, he said. They see only columns of numbers, not faces. You speak as if you know them, she said. I do, he answered. Too well. She turned away, suddenly angry with him too, though she knew it was unfair. Why should you care? She muttered. You will leave when you can walk, and this will be a small story you tell someone one day. About the poor girl in the woods who helped you for nothing. I will not forget you, he said quietly. People forget what is uncomfortable, she said. It is easier. He did not try to argue. The days that followed were less peaceful. Patrols passed more often on the path near the well. Elise saw unfamiliar faces, men who wore the expression of those pleased to be in charge. They spoke politely to the villagers, but their questions were sharp. One afternoon, as she filled her bucket, one of them approached her. He was the same official who had been at her door with the papers. Now he wore a small badge pinned neatly to his coat, as if to remind everyone that his authority came from somewhere above. Mademoiselle Elise, he said. Still hauling water yourself? There is no one else to do it, she replied. You have not seen anyone wandering in the forest? He asked. A man, perhaps, middle height, well-dressed, traveling with 2 small children. Her heart skipped, but her face stayed calm. The only children I see are the ones who throw stones at my door when they feel bold, she said. He smiled as if she had told a charming little joke. If you see anyone, you must tell me, he said. It would be a shame if your difficulties with payments were misunderstood as a sign of disloyalty. I owe money, not allegiance, she said, before she could stop herself. His eyes narrowed. You owe both, he said. Everyone does in their own way. She lowered her gaze, biting back further words. There was no safety in them. When she returned to the cabin, she found Louis standing by the window, watching the trees. You should not be on your feet so long, she said. I heard voices, he replied. I saw them pass. He is the same man as before, is he not? Yes, she said. He serves those who question travelers on the road, Louis said thoughtfully. He would be very interested to know who lies in your bed. I told him nothing, she said quickly, even when he hinted that my debts might become more serious. Louis's jaw tightened. He used that? He asked. Your debts? Yes, she said. Why not? It is easy. I have nothing but this cabin. No one to speak for me. I am an easy target. He walked carefully to the table and sat down, wincing a little. This is not how it should be, he said. How should it be? She asked. You speak as if you could change it with a word. He hesitated, then shrugged. Perhaps not with a word, he said, but with time, with different choices, if those who make laws remembered faces like yours when they wrote them. You talk like a man who has seen those rooms, she said. He gave a small, weary smile. I have seen more rooms than I care to remember, he replied. That night, after the twins finally fell asleep, Elise sat at the table with a small candle mending a tear in one of Louis's coats. It felt strange to be sewing for a man who was not kin and not her employer, but care had become habit. She could not look at loose threads and pretend not to see them. She turned the coat over in her hands. The fabric was fine, better than anything she had worn, yet it was not the richest she had glimpsed from afar on feast days. It seemed designed for travel, practical in its way. Her fingers brushed the inside of the lining. They encountered a small, firm bump she had not noticed before. She frowned and probed gently until her nails found the edge of a hidden pocket. "What is this?" she murmured to herself. Curiosity prickled. She slipped her fingers inside and felt something cold and smooth. She grasped it and drew it out into the candlelight. A ring lay in her palm. Heavy. Gold. Her breath caught. It was not simply a band. On the top, carefully engraved, was a crest she knew at once. She had seen it from a distance when banners flew over the great house during celebrations. She had seen it on coins, worn and faint. The crown, the stylized lilies, the shield, the emblem of the Beaumont family. She stared at it, her hand trembling as the truth rushed toward her like water breaking through a dam. The man sleeping in her bed, the father of the twins she had fed and soothed, was not Louis Martin at all, but Louis Beaumont, the prince himself. Elise stared at the ring as if it burned. The candle flame shook a little in the draught from the window. The gold caught the light and threw it back at her in small, sharp flashes. Her hand felt suddenly too small, too rough, to hold something like that. She had seen that crest on coins, on banners far away over stone walls, on the chest of riders who never glanced toward the poor. She had never expected to see it lying in her palm, warm from the lining of a man's coat on her own table. Behind her, the straw on the bed rustled. Louis shifted, half in sleep, half out of it. One of the twins sighed and rolled over, bumping against him. "Papa," Claire murmured drowsily. "Hush," he whispered back. "Go to sleep, ma petite." His voice, soft and tired, sounded ordinary. It did not sound like the voice of a prince. Yet the ring in her hand said otherwise. Her breath came faster. Her thoughts tumbled. A prince. In her bed. In her house. A prince whose face might be on posters, whose name might be on everyone's lips in the village. A prince whom men from one side or another might be desperately trying to find. And she had brought him inside without knowing. She had lied for him without understanding what it meant. Her fingers closed around the ring. She stood up, the stool scraping the floor a little too loudly. Louis's head lifted. "Elise," he asked softly, "is something wrong?" She walked toward the bed, the ring clenched in her fist, her heart pounding so hard it made her feel slightly dizzy. "We need to talk," she said. He frowned, pushed himself up on one elbow, careful not to jostle the twins too much. "Now?" he asked. "It is late." "Yes," she said. "Now." He heard the tone in her voice. Carefully, he slid out from between the children, settling them so they lay side by side. Henri grumbled once, but did not wake fully. Claire curled her fingers in the blanket and sighed. Louis limped the few steps to the table and sat down in the chair opposite her. "What is it?" he asked. She opened her hand and placed the ring between them. He went very still. For a moment, neither spoke. The candle burned quietly, a little pool of light around the gold crest. At last he reached out and touched the ring with one fingertip, like a man greeting an old acquaintance he had hoped never to see again. "I suppose I hid it less carefully than I thought," he said. "You lied to me," she said, her voice low. "From the first moment you said your name was Louis Martin." "It is not entirely a lie," he answered. "My name is Louis." "Do not play with words," she snapped. "You know what I mean. You did not tell me who you are." He lifted his gaze to meet hers. There was no arrogance there now, only a kind of weary honesty. "If I had told you," he asked quietly, "what would you have done?" "I do not know," she said, "but I would have had the right to choose." "You are right," he said. "You would have." She stared at him, thrown for a moment by his agreement. "Then why did you not?" she demanded. "Why did you come into my house, eat my bread, let me lie for you and never say the truth?" "Because the truth can crush people," he replied. "Because I saw how alone you are. I saw the fear in your eyes when your neighbor warned you about officials. I did not want to throw the weight of my name onto your shoulders when you already carry so much." He looked down at the ring again, then back at her. "I am Louis Beaumont," he said quietly. "Prince of France, whether that title brings respect or resentment these days, and the two children sleeping in your bed are my son and daughter." The words hung between them like something heavy and fragile. Elise pulled out the other chair and sat down slowly. Her knees would not hold her if she stood much longer. "The carriage," she said. "It was not just any carriage." "No," he said. "It was mine, or rather, the one prepared for me. We travelled with a small number of attendants as quietly as possible to visit associates near the border. There were talks to be held, people to reassure. We hoped that by showing willingness to listen, we might calm certain tensions." "And instead?" she asked. "Instead, others saw an opportunity," he said. "There are those who think my family has had its time. There are those who think they can guide the kingdom better. Some of them may not be entirely wrong about the need for change, but method and timing." He shook his head. "Our carriage was recognized," he went on. "Not everyone in the world wishes me well. Some of those watching the roads that day did not serve the same interests as those who sent me. There were questions, accusations. The coachman grew frightened. In his panic, he mishandled the horses. The carriage swayed, then tipped slightly. No one was thrown far. No one lay bleeding on the ground. But in the confusion, I heard one voice close to the door say that it would be useful if I disappeared. If only for a while." His fingers tightened on the ring. "I looked at my children," he said softly. "I saw fear in their eyes. I did not wait to learn what disappeared meant. I took them and stepped down onto the road. People were shouting. Some were calling my name. Others were saying I should stay, that it was dangerous to leave. I did not listen. I walked toward the trees. Then I ran. I thought foolishly that once we reached the forest we would be invisible." "You hurt your head when the carriage tilted," she said slowly. "That is why you could hardly stay upright." "Yes," he said. "I have only flashes of memory between the moment I left the coach and the moment you found me under the tree. I remember branches. I remember Henri crying. I remember Claire asking if we were playing a game. And all this time," she said, "you knew men from both sides might be searching for you." "I guessed," he said. "Men who wish to protect me, men who wish to use me, men who wish to blame me. It is difficult now to know who is who." "And still you stayed here," she said, "in my house, letting me face their questions." "You faced them because you chose to take us in," he answered gently. "But yes, I stayed, because my ankle would not carry me far, because taking the children back toward the road felt like sending them into a storm, because you made this place feel, for a little while, like a harbor." Her throat tightened despite herself. She swallowed. "You should have told me," she insisted. "I know," he said. She blinked. She had expected more excuses. "You are angry," he added. "Yes," she said, "I am angry and frightened. Do you know what they will do to someone like me if they find you here? They will not say, 'Ah, brave Elise who sheltered the prince.' They will say, 'This foolish girl chose a side and must bear the cost.'" "Yes," he said again, his voice low. "I know." "Do you?" she demanded. "Do you know what it is to have no one to speak for you? To stand in a room where everyone has paper and seals and fine words, and you have only your calloused hands and your empty purse?" He looked at her with a pain that seemed to go beyond his ankle. "No," he admitted, "I do not know that. Not as you do. I have never stood alone in such a room. When I enter, people stand. They listen, even when they disagree. I have always had a name to shield me. That is what I was born into." He paused, then added very quietly, "And that is exactly why I am ashamed you have had to lie for me." Silence stretched between them. The candle flickered. "At least you understand that much," she said finally. He let out a slow breath. "If you wish us to leave," he said, "say the word. When the sun rises, I will take the children and go as far as my foot allows. I will not blame you. You owe us nothing." She stared at him. The image of Louis limping through the forest with a child on each arm, no food, no shelter, formed in her mind. It made her stomach twist. "And if you cannot walk far," she asked, "if you fall, if the children grow sick from cold and hunger?" He closed his eyes for a moment. "Then I will do what I can," he said. "It is my responsibility, not yours." She pushed the ring toward him across the table. "Keep it," she said. "If someone else finds it here, I will have no way to explain it." He picked up the ring and turned it between his fingers. "I hid this when we first left the house," he said. "I did not want it to draw attention. Funny, is it not, that the one symbol of my power is the very thing that makes me weak now. Power, she repeated softly. It does not look like power from where I sit. He slipped the ring back into his hand, like someone hiding a piece of himself. What will you do, Elise? He asked. Honestly, do you wish us gone? She thought of the collector's smirk, of Madame Fournier's warning, of the twins' small hands curled around her fingers, of the quiet nights by the fire, the murmured stories, the way Louis looked at his children as if the rest of the world had fallen away. I wish none of this had happened, she said. I wish your carriage had passed safely. I wish I had filled my wood basket and come home to an empty bed. But that is not what happened, he said. No, she agreed. She rubbed her forehead. Her head ached. If I send you away, she said slowly, I will lie awake every night wondering where your children are. If I keep you here, I may lose my home, my freedom. He said nothing, letting her own words turn in the air. I cannot turn you out, she said at last, her voice barely above a whisper. I am angry with you, but I cannot do it. Not with them sleeping in my bed. Relief flickered in his eyes, mixed with something like sorrow. Thank you, he said. Do not thank me, she snapped. Just do not lie to me again. If there is something I should know, tell me. If men are likely to knock on my door with questions, you must say so before I open it. He nodded. I give you my word, he said. No more half-truths, not here. She studied him for another long moment, then stood abruptly. Go back to bed, she said. Your children will wake if you stay away too long. And I must sleep, or I will be useless when trouble comes. When trouble comes, he repeated. She gave a humorless smile. For people like me, trouble is never an if, she said. Only a when. The trouble did come, though not in the shape of sudden shouting or banging fists. It came in glances, in questions, in the quiet tightening of the world around her. Over the next days, the men from the office appeared more often in the village. Notices hung on walls, written in firm, dark ink. Elise could not read all the words, but she could understand enough. The name Beaumont, the mention of missing high personages, the promise of favor for those who helped. When she went to Tradewood, people stood in small groups, whispering. They say the prince may have slipped away, a man told the baker. Nothing confirmed, of course. But imagine, a prince wandering about like any traveler. I would not want a prince in my house, the baker said. Too many questions follow. Too much danger, added his wife. Let those in big houses deal with such guests. Perhaps he is far from here, someone said. Near the border, near the city. Perhaps he is closer than we think, another replied. Their voices followed Elise as she moved through the square, her bundle of wood feeling heavier than ever. Madame Fournier caught her arm on the way back. You have seen nothing, the older woman asked. You would tell me if you had. I could advise you. I have seen nothing, Elise said, forcing her voice to remain steady. Madame Fournier narrowed her eyes but nodded slowly. Remember what I said, she murmured. Men in fine coats will not care who fed whom. They will only care who disobeyed. At home, Louis watched her face as she set down the wood. You heard more? He asked. Yes, she said. They speak of you as if you are a puzzle to solve, a missing piece on a game board. Perhaps that is all I am to some of them, he said. Not to your children, she replied. He smiled faintly. No, he agreed. Not to them. They spoke more openly after that night at the table. Louis told her of councils where voices rose, of debates about bread and loyalty, of people in distant towns whose names she had never heard, but whose lives sounded not unlike her own. He confessed his doubts, his failures, his attempts to push for more fairness that often met resistance. I thought I had time, he said one afternoon, watching Henri stack little stones near the hearth. Time to learn, time to change things slowly. I did not realize how quickly the ground was shifting under our feet. You sit high, she said. It is hard to feel the earth moving when you sit so far above it. He looked at her, and there was no offense in his eyes, only understanding. You are right, he said. I have been blind to much. You have been my correction. Correction, she repeated with a doubtful laugh. That is a fine word for scolding. It is more than that, he said. You have shown me what my decisions look like from the floor, not from the map. Their odd companionship deepened. The children, sensing the change in tone between them, relaxed as well. Claire reached for Elise's hand more often. Henri began to bring her little treasures, a smooth pebble, a twig shaped like a tiny fork. But outside, the net drew tighter. One evening, as the light faded, the familiar figure of the collector appeared again at the edge of the clearing. Elise saw him through the narrow gap in the shutters as she stirred a pot over the fire. Her spoon stopped. "What is it?" Louis asked quietly. "He is coming," she said. "The man with the papers." Louis rose carefully from the stool. "We will go behind the curtain," he said. "Keep your voice calm. Do not let him think anything has changed." She nodded, her throat dry. He gathered the twins quickly. They knew the drill now. They did not fuss. They let him lead them to the bed where they lay still, holding their breath. A knock came at the door, not loud, very precise. Elise wiped her hands and went to answer. "Mademoiselle," the collector said as she opened the door, "we must speak again." "You have already taken everything I have," she said. "What more is there?" "You may have more than you admit," he replied, stepping inside without waiting. He looked around with narrowed eyes. His gaze fell on the pot on the fire. "You are eating well," he remarked, "for someone who claims to struggle." "It is lentils and water," she said. "Nothing more." He walked farther in, examining the table, the stool, the small pile of mended clothes. "You have been busy," he said. "Sewing, repairing. For yourself?" "For anyone who pays," she said quickly. "I take in mending when I can." His eyes drifted to the curtain. "You spend a great deal of time alone, yet your curtains are pulled," he noted. "Do you fear the trees will watch you?" "I fear drafts," she replied. "The wind catches me when I sleep." He smiled without warmth. "There have been more reports," he said. "People are still talking about the missing prince. Some say he was seen near the forest. Some say he carries children. It would be quite a story, would it not? To find such a man hiding in a place like this." "I know nothing of princes," she said, her heart pounding. "Everyone knows something of princes," he replied, "even if they pretend not to." He stepped closer to the curtain. "Shall we see how you sleep, Mademoiselle Elise?" he asked lightly. "Perhaps your bed holds more than blankets." Her mouth went dry. "You have no right," she began. "I have every right," he interrupted smoothly. "In times of uncertainty, we must be certain of those around us. People who live alone in the woods often think rules do not apply to them." He reached out and took hold of the edge of the curtain. The thin fabric trembled under his fingers as he began to draw it back. The curtain slid back in the man's hand. Elise's breath stopped. Her fingers dug into the edge of the table. Behind the curtain, the bed was visible, the blanket pulled up, the straw a little uneven. At first glance, there was nothing else. Then Henri shifted under the covers and let out a tiny sneeze. The collector's eyes sharpened. "You said you sleep by the fire," he said softly, "and yet your bed is warm." He took another step and reached for the blanket. Before he could pull it down, Louis spoke. "That is far enough," he said. He pushed himself up from the bed, keeping the blanket drawn up to the children's chins. His hair was slightly mussed, his shirt open at the collar, his ankle stiff, but his posture held a quiet strength. The collector turned, surprised. For a moment, he seemed unsure what he was seeing. A well-spoken stranger in a peasant cabin was not what he had expected. "And who are you?" he asked, his tone light but edged. "Mademoiselle Elise told me she lived alone." "I have been unwell," Louis said calmly. "She took me in." "So generous," the collector murmured. "You are far from any road, monsieur. How did you come to lose your way?" Louis's gaze did not waver. "Some days ago, the carriage I traveled with was stopped near the village," he said. "There was confusion. I left it and walked into the forest. I twisted my ankle. Your citizen here found me and brought me to her home." "You say the carriage as if it were just any carriage," the collector said. "But I have heard many tales of this particular one. A fine vehicle, a royal crest, important passengers." Louis's hand tightened slightly on the blanket. "I did not say it was not fine," he replied, "only that I left it." The collector studied his face. His eyes took in the cut of Louis's cheekbones, the line of his jaw, the quality of his voice. "You speak like a man used to being heard," he said, "used to being obeyed. And you speak like a man used to being feared," Louis answered quietly. The collector's lips curved. "Fear has its uses," he said. "It keeps people honest." "It keeps them silent," Louis said. "That is not the same thing." Elise stood frozen, watching the exchange like a game played high above her head. Yet everything in it could fall and crush her. "Who are the children?" the collector asked, nodding toward the small shapes under the blanket. "My charges?" Louis said. "Their mother is gone. Their safety is my duty." "Your employer must value you greatly to trust you with such treasures," the collector said. "Tell me, where is this employer now?" "Far from here, I hope," Louis replied. "And yet my notices speak of a missing prince," the collector went on, his voice almost mild. "A prince with 2 small children. A man with your manner, your face." He stepped closer until they were only a few steps apart. "If I were to bring such a man to those who search for him," he said, "my position would improve greatly. My debts would be forgiven. My name would be remembered." "Perhaps," Louis said. The collector tilted his head. "You do not seem alarmed," he observed. "I'm alarmed for those who have helped me," Louis answered. "As for myself, I knew from the moment I stepped off the carriage that I was stepping away from safety." His eyes went briefly to Elise, then back. "This woman did not know who I was when she found me," he said. "She knew only that I could not walk, and that 2 children needed shelter. Judge her for that kindness if you wish, but understand that the guilt is mine, not hers." "Guilt," the collector repeated softly. "That is a strong word." "It fits," Louis said. "I brought danger to her door." He moved his hand away from the blanket very slowly, as if making a deliberate choice. Then, before either of them could stop him, he reached into his pocket and drew out the ring. The gold glinted in the dim light. The collector's eyes widened for the first time since entering. "So you are either very foolish," he murmured, "or very certain of something I do not yet see." Louis placed the ring on the small table by the bed between them. "I am tired of hiding," he said, "and tired of making this woman lie for me. You want proof? Here it is." The collector looked from the ring to Louis's face, searching for any sign of trickery. Finding none, he let out a slow breath. "So it is true," he said. "The prince has been sleeping in a peasant's bed." "Yes," Louis said simply. "You risk much showing me this," the collector said. "You do not know where my loyalties lie." "Perhaps not," Louis replied, "but I have watched you when you thought no one saw. In the village, on the road. You enjoy your power, but you do not enjoy chaos. You like coins counted, papers ordered. You do not like uncertainty. You know as well as I do that if I vanish, others will seize the chance to speak in my name. That would be chaos." The collector's jaw tightened a fraction. "Do you think you are the answer to chaos?" he asked. "No," Louis said. "I think I am responsible for much of the unease. My family has ruled a long time. Some things have not changed as they should. I cannot pretend innocence. But I also know this. The people who truly suffer in these disputes are not men like you or me. They are people like her." He nodded toward Elise. "She is the one you threaten with notices," he said. "She is the one you corner at her own door. She is the one who will pay for any shift in power, while men in meetings argue over ideas. I have seen her work. I have seen her go without, so that her debts do not grow beyond hope. And still she took in a stranger with 2 hungry children. If you wish to make an example of someone, make it of me, not of her." The collector's gaze slid to Elise. "You knew," he asked her, "that he was this man?" "Not at first," she said. "I thought he was any other fool who left the road." "And now?" he pressed. "Now I know who he is," she said, "and I know he does not take enough care with his ankles." Despite the tension, the corner of Louis's mouth twitched. The collector gave a short, humorless laugh. "You mock me," he said. "Both of you." "We speak plainly," Louis corrected. The collector looked back at the ring, then at the twins' small shapes. "If I close this curtain," he said slowly, "and walk away, others will come. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next week, but word travels. Sooner or later someone else will see traces. Then you will not be facing a man who enjoys counted coins. You will be facing men who enjoy other things." "I know," Louis said. "Do you have anywhere safer to go?" the collector asked brusquely. "Somewhere with walls thicker than this, somewhere not held together by the stubbornness of one young woman." "Yes," Louis said, "if we can walk a little. There is someone who will hide us, not because of my name, but because of an old affection. But to reach him we must pass men like you." The collector's eyes narrowed. "Flattery will not soften me," he said. "It is not flattery," Louis replied. "It is observation. You understand rules. I am appealing to that, nothing more." There was a long silence. Henri shifted again and peeked out from under the blanket, his hair tousled, his expression confused. "Papa," he whispered. Louis turned at once. "It is all right," he said softly. "Go back to sleep." Henri saw the stranger and clutched at the blanket, but he did not cry. He only stared, as if waiting to see whether this man meant them harm. The collector's gaze lingered on the boy's face. Something in his expression softened almost imperceptibly. "I have daughters," he said quietly, "in the town. They tug at my coat when I leave, asking when I will return. I tell them I'm doing important work, that I keep people safe. Sometimes I believe it. Sometimes I am less sure." He stepped back from the bed and let the curtain fall. "I should take you," he said. "I should march you into the village, ring that bell, hold up your ring. They would praise me. They would write my name." "Yes," Louis said. "But if I do," the collector went on, "what happens to her? To them?" He nodded at the curtain. "They will attach your name to hers," Louis said. "They will say she aided you. Even if she says she did not know, they will not listen." The collector blew out a breath. "You ask me to risk much," he said. "I ask you to choose what kind of man you wish to be," Louis replied quietly. Elise felt her heart beating against her ribs. The room suddenly seemed too small to contain so many consequences. The collector tapped the edge of the table with 2 fingers, thinking. Then he straightened. "You will leave this place," he said suddenly. "Soon, before dawn tomorrow. Do you understand me?" Louis nodded once. "Yes," he said. The collector turned to Elise. "You will remove all sign that anyone has been here," he said. "No extra cups, no mended coats that are not yours, no child's shoes by the hearth. If anyone asks, you deny, not with defiance, with bewilderment. You are clever enough to manage that." She swallowed. "I can try," she said. "You will do more than try," he snapped. Then he paused. His voice softened by a fraction. "You will succeed because you wish to live." He walked toward the door, then stopped. "If anyone asks whether I visited you today," he said without turning, "you will say no. I came yesterday and the day before, not today. Do you understand?" "Yes," she whispered. He glanced back over his shoulder. "And you," he said to Louis, "will show yourself to those who need to see you, and not a moment later. Do not hide forever in shadows like these. Shadows breed stories. Stories can be worse than truth." "I will remember," Louis said. The collector nodded once almost sharply and left. The door closed behind him with a click. For a few heartbeats, no one moved. Then Henri emerged fully from under the blanket and scrambled out of bed, running to Louis. "Papa, who was that man?" he asked, wrapping his arms around his father's leg. "A man who asked too many questions," Louis said, bending to hug him. "But he will not trouble us again, if we do what he said." Claire peeked out, her curls tangled. "Are we leaving?" she asked. "Like in the forest?" "Yes," Louis said, straightening slowly. "But this time we leave with a place to go." Elise let out a breath she had not known she was holding. "He could have taken you," she said. "All he had to do was shout." "He had a choice," Louis replied. "He took the harder one." "The harder one," she repeated. "For him or for us?" "For all of us," he said. "But perhaps also the better." She shook her head. "I do not trust men who change their minds so quickly," she muttered. "Nor do I," he said softly. "But we can use the time he bought us." He looked around the cabin, his eyes lingering on each small thing she owned. "We must pack what little we can carry," he said, "and decide what to leave." "There is not much to decide," she replied. "Everything here is heavy and worth little, except the tools, and the pot, and the blanket." "And your letters," he said. "Those you keep in the box under the bed." She stared at him. "How did you—" "I saw you reading one at night," he said. "You held it as if it was something very precious." She turned away quickly, so he would not see how that touched her. "I will need to bank the fire," she said. "If someone comes and finds cold ashes, they will know I left in a hurry." He nodded. "We will go before dawn," he said, "when the forest is quiet." She moved through the room, touching objects with quick hands. Her grandmother's wooden spoon. The chipped cup her brother had carved a design into when he was a boy. Each one held a memory, but memories did not fit into a bag. "Where will we go?" she asked. "To a man I trust," Louis said. "My old tutor. He lives near a town 2 days' walk from here if we go slowly. He left court years ago when he grew tired of arguments. He cares more for books and gardens now, but he cares for me also. He will help us without asking for more than we can give. Will he want a stranger in his house, she asked. He will want anyone who kept his former student alive, Louis said simply. The night passed in small movements. Elise rolled up the blanket and tied it with twine. She wrapped a piece of cheese and the last of the bread in cloth. She filled a small sack with lentils. She tucked her brother's letters under her blouse. Louis prepared the children, explaining that they would be going on an adventure, that they would walk through trees again, but this time there would be a friendly house at the end. "Will there be soup?" Claire asked. "There's always soup where my tutor lives," Louis said with a smile. He believes nothing serious can be discussed on an empty stomach. In the darkest hour before dawn, they stepped outside. The air was cool and damp. The trees were only shapes against the sky. The cabin behind them looked smaller than ever, its window dark, its door closed. "Do you wish to say goodbye?" Louis asked quietly. Elise looked at the house that had held her whole life, the place where she had laughed with her brother as children, the place where she had wept when her parents were gone, the place where, for a few strange days, a prince and his children had turned her routine into something both terrifying and precious. "There is no one to hear me," she said. "I will say goodbye with my back." She turned away and did not look again. The path through the forest felt different when leaving for good. Each step sounded louder. Each twig crack seemed to shout. Henri held Louis's hand. Claire held Elise's. When the children tired, they took turns carrying them, resting often. "You could have stayed," Louis said once during a pause on a mossy log. "He did not tell you to leave, only me." "And let you limp through the forest alone again?" she said. "No. Besides, if questions come, they will not end at my door. The forest is no longer a good hiding place. I would have been chased eventually even without you." He studied her face. "Do you regret it?" he asked quietly. "Helping us? Coming with us?" She looked down at Claire's head resting against her arm. "I regret the tax collector," she said. "I regret my debts. I regret that the world is shaped so that people like me always pay for choices we did not make. But I do not regret opening my door to crying children." "And me?" he asked. She hesitated, surprised by how much the question mattered. "You came with them," she said. "So I suppose I do not regret you either." He smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. "Then I am content," he said. They reached the tutor's village as the sun was lowering on the second day. It was larger than Elise's, with more houses clustered together, but it still smelled of bread and smoke and animals. They did not go through the center. Louis led them along a side lane, then down a narrow path bordered by low stone walls. At the end stood a modest house with a small garden. Nothing grand, just a door, a window, a few pots with herbs. Louis took a deep breath and knocked. After a moment, the door opened. An older man with silver hair and kind eyes peered out. He wore a plain coat and held a book in one hand, his thumb marking the page. "Yes," he asked. "Do you seek—" He stopped. "Louis," he said, his voice dropping. "What have you done now?" Louis laughed softly. "Many foolish things," he said. "But one wise one, I hope. In coming to you." The older man stepped aside at once. "Come in," he said. "Quickly, before every neighbor sees your face and faints." They entered. The house smelled of ink and dried herbs. The tutor closed the door firmly and turned to look them over. "You disappeared," he said to Louis. "Rumors traveled faster than letters. They say you vanished from a carriage, like some story in a cheap book. Now I see the reality is less glamorous." He glanced at Louis's limp, at the children's tired faces, at Elise standing uncertainly by the wall. "And this," he said, "must be the person with more sense than you, since you are still breathing. Mademoiselle, I thank you in advance." Elise flushed. "I did only what anyone would do," she said. "Not anyone," the tutor said. "I know many people. Few would risk what you have." He set his book aside. "You will stay here as long as needed," he said to Louis. "The rooms are small, but the walls are thicker than your forest cabins. And I have learned, over the years, who listens and who does not." He turned to Elise. "You are welcome," he added. "This house has lacked a woman's eye for far too long. I am tired of my own cooking." Her shoulders eased. "Thank you," she said softly. The days that followed were strangely gentle. The tutor's house creaked in familiar ways. He brewed strong tea, insisted on proper meals, and scolded Louis when he tried to do too much on his ankle. "Sit," the older man said more than once. "You are no use to anyone if you fall on your face." He and Louis spoke often in the evenings, heads bent together over the table. They talked of the capital, of letters received, of changing moods. Sometimes their voices rose, but not in anger, only in urgency. "You cannot stay hidden here forever," the tutor said. "Sooner or later you must step back into the light. If you do not speak, others will speak for you." "I know," Louis said. "I'm only trying to decide how to step without crushing more people like her." He nodded toward Elise, who was mending a shirt under the window. She pretended not to hear, but the words settled in her chest. With the children, life remained simple. They helped in the garden. They chased each other around the table. They demanded stories from both men and from Elise. One evening, after the twins had fallen asleep in a corner room, and the tutor had retired with a candle and a book, Louis and Elise found themselves alone in the small kitchen. The fire was low. The night outside was very quiet. A soft feeling of safety wrapped around the house. Louis leaned against the table, watching her rinse a bowl. "You have adapted quickly," he said. "To this place, to him, to us." "I have adapted to many things," she replied. "This is at least a warm one." He smiled. "I am glad it is warm," he said. She set the bowl aside and wiped her hands. "You will go back, won't you?" she asked. "To your world, to your papers and meetings and arguments?" "Yes," he said. "I cannot stay in borrowed safety forever." "Are you afraid?" she asked. "Of making the wrong choice," he said. "Constantly. Of failing people who trust me. That fear wakes me at night." "And of them?" she asked. "Those who wanted you to disappear." He thought for a moment. "I am less afraid of them now," he said. "Not because they have grown weaker, but because I have seen more clearly what it means to vanish. It is not my own life that worries me. It is what would happen in the space I leave." She studied his face. "You speak differently now," she said. "When you arrived, you were a man losing his breath. Now you sound like a man who knows what he wants." "Do I?" he asked, surprised. "Yes," she said. "You want to go back. You want to try to change things. And you want—" She stopped. He watched her. "What do I want, Elise?" he asked gently. She shook her head. "It is not my place to say," she murmured. He stepped closer, slowly, as if approaching a startled bird. "You have told me many truths that were not your place to say," he said. "One more will not hurt." She looked up at him. The distance between them felt suddenly very small. "You want your children safe," she said. "You want them to grow up seeing the world differently than you did. You want them to know bread is not a miracle, that it is something every child should expect." "Yes," he said quietly. "I want all of that." "And you want to carry all of it alone," she added. "Because you think that is what a prince must do." He smiled sadly. "You know me too well," he said. She took a breath. "I have seen men carry burdens in the village," she said. "Grain sacks, crates. Sometimes they try to lift too much, and they stagger. The load falls and breaks. Someone else has to clean up the mess. It is foolish. A wise man asks for another pair of hands." "Do you think I am wise?" he asked. "I think you are learning," she said. He laughed softly. "That is fair," he said. He hesitated, then spoke more quietly. "There is something I have not said," he went on. "Not because I wished to hide it, but because I feared it would be an additional weight." She tilted her head. "What is it?" she asked. He looked down at his hands, then back at her. "When I lay under that tree before you found me," he said, "I thought it might be the end. I was not afraid for myself. I was afraid for them, and then I heard your voice, and for the first time in days, I felt hope. Not because of who you were, because you were someone, a person who saw children and did not ask whom they belonged to before helping. That is not a confession," she said softly. "That is a compliment. There is more," he said. He stepped a little closer again. "In your cabin, when the collector spoke to you as if you were a piece of furniture," he said, "I listened. I watched your face, your anger, your dignity. It did something to me. I have read reports about hardship. I have heard speeches, but it was your voice that made it real. Since then I have not been able to think of my duties without thinking of you." She swallowed. "Because I am poor?" she asked. "Because you are brave," he said. "Because you are honest." Because you remind me that crowns and coats mean nothing if the people wearing them cannot look someone like you in the eye. That still does not sound like a confession, she whispered. He took another small step, close enough now that she could see the faint line at the corner of his eye when he smiled. I think of you when I wake, he said quietly. I look for you when you leave the room, when you laugh with my children. Something inside me feels at home. I do not know when it began. Perhaps with the first bowl of lentils. Perhaps with the first time you scolded me. But I know this. The thought of returning to my life without you feels wrong, incomplete. Her heart hammered. Louis, she said, warning and plea in the single word. He lifted a hand, then let it fall as if afraid to startle her. I know what I am, he said. I know what you are. The world would say we do not belong in the same story. A prince and a peasant woman. They would call it foolishness, ambition, scandal. I do not care what they call it. I care what is true. And what is true? She whispered. He held her gaze. That I love you, he said simply. The words seemed to land in the small kitchen like something solid and clear. She blinked, as if he had knocked the air from her lungs without touching her. You should not say that, she managed. Then I should also not feel it, he answered. And yet I do, every day, growing, not fading. She turned away for a moment, pressing her hands against the edge of the table. You will go back, she said. You will stand in bright rooms with polished floors. People will bow to you. They will bring their daughters, their nieces, their cousins, all dressed in silk, all taught how to speak and move. They will tell you that choosing one of them is your duty. Perhaps they will, he said. And I... She laughed shakily. I will still be the girl who knows how to bank a fire and stretch lentils. I will never know which fork to use. I will never know the right word at the right moment. They will laugh at me behind their hands. I do not want their hands, he said quietly. I want yours. She looked down at her fingers. Rough, calloused, stained. These? She said. Yes, he replied. Those. He took one of her hands in both of his, gently, as if asking permission rather than claiming. I do not ask you for an answer now, he said. I know what I ask is heavy. I will soon have to return and face whatever waits. When I do, I must speak of bread and laws and peace. But beneath all that, there will be another truth, that I left the forest not only owing my life to you, but giving my heart to you. She closed her eyes for a moment. I do not know if I can follow you into that world, she whispered. It frightens me. I understand, he said. Truly, whatever you choose, I will be grateful for every moment we have had. You gave my children safety. You gave me clarity. You owe me nothing more. She opened her eyes and looked at him. You say you love me, she said. Yes, he answered. Then do not make decisions for me, she said. Do not decide what is too heavy for me to carry. I have carried wood and water and debt all my life. I am stronger than I look. He smiled a little uncertainly. I will try not to underestimate you, he said. Good, she replied. For a while they stood in quiet, his hands still gently holding hers, the fire crackling softly in the hearth. Finally she spoke again, her voice very low. I do not know yet what my answer is, she said. To the life that waits, to the eyes that will watch. But I know this. When you say you love me, I believe you. And that frightens me more than anything. Because when I look at you with your children, with your worry, with your foolish ankle, I feel something I have no name for. He waited, hardly daring to breathe. Perhaps, she whispered, it is the same thing you feel. A slow, profound relief spread across his face. That is enough, he said. For now, that is more than enough. She squeezed his hands once, then gently pulled away. Go to bed, Louis, she said softly. Tomorrow you will speak again with your tutor about when to return. And whatever you decide, we will face it when it comes. He nodded. Will you sleep? He asked. Eventually, she said. I have much to think about. He hesitated, then leaned forward and pressed a light kiss to her hand, just above her knuckles. A simple gesture, wordless but full. Good night, Elise, he murmured. Good night, she replied. When he had gone, she sat for a long moment in the quiet kitchen, her hand still tingling where his lips had touched it, knowing that whatever waited outside that small house, the path ahead was no longer only his to walk. The morning after Louis's confession, the house felt different. The walls were the same, The tutor's footsteps sounded the same on the old boards. The twins still woke too early, arguing sleepily over who got which cup. But under all that, something quiet and new stretched between Louis and Elise. He came into the kitchen with his hair still damp from washing and a cautious hope in his eyes. She stood by the hearth, stirring a pot, very aware of him, though she didn't look up right away. "Good morning," he said. "Good morning," she answered, and the simple words carried everything they had not yet said. Before he could speak again, the tutor stepped into the room holding a folded letter. "I have been searching for you," he said to Louis. "Well, the messenger has been, at least. I merely opened the door." Louis straightened. "A letter?" he asked. "From whom?" "From those who pretend to be in charge while you hide in my kitchen," the tutor said dryly. "It bears the royal seal and too much wax." He handed it over. Louis broke the seal with steady fingers and scanned the lines. His expression shifted from tension to brief relief, then to a serious calm. "What is it?" Elise asked, setting the spoon aside. "They ask me to return," he said, "not as a prisoner, as a necessary voice. They speak of restoring order, of reassuring the people, of proving that no one has vanished." "Is it a summons?" the tutor asked, "or a plea?" "A little of both," Louis said. "They try to sound commanding, but the ink betrays their worry." Elise wiped her hands on her apron. "Will you go?" she asked. "Yes," he said at once. "I must. Hiding here while others decide my fate and the fate of the kingdom would be cowardice." The tutor nodded once, satisfied. "Good," he said. "I would have dragged you there myself, if you hesitated." Louis smiled faintly and then looked at Elise. "I will not go alone," he said. She blinked. "You must," she replied. "They did not ask for me." "They did not ask for you," he said, "because they do not yet understand how much they owe you. But I do, and I do not intend to walk back into that world as if these days never happened." The tutor cleared his throat. "It may be complicated," he said carefully, "bringing a peasant woman and 2 small children into rooms where every chair has a history." "Let the chairs learn a new one," Louis said. He turned back to Elise. "Come with me," he said simply. "You and the children. I will not pretend the city is easy. It is noisy and sharp and full of eyes, but I would rather face it with you than without you." She leaned back against the table, searching his face. "And what would I be there?" she asked. "Your secret? Your guest? Your shame?" "You would be the woman who saved my life," he said. "The one whose words change how I speak, the one whose presence I need if I am to be anything better than I was." Her throat tightened. "The people there will talk," she said. "They will call me names they do not dare say to your face. Their whispers will not feed them," he replied. "Their bread will come from decisions we make. If I am to speak of fairness, I must be willing to live it, even in my own house." The tutor nodded approvingly. "At last, a student who listens," he said softly. Elise hesitated. "I do not know if I am made for halls and titles," she said. "I know how to walk in forests, not on polished floors. Then we shall lay carpets that welcome forest feet," Louis answered, a smile touching his eyes. She laughed in spite of herself. "You make everything sound simple," she said. "It is not simple," he replied. "It is very hard. That is why I ask you, not command you. If you say no, I will still go. I will still try to change what I can, and I will still owe you more than I can ever repay, but I will carry an emptiness with me, that is the truth." He did not step closer. He simply waited, letting her choice be free. Claire padded into the room, rubbing her eyes. "Are we going somewhere again?" the little girl mumbled. "I heard you say go." Louis bent to pick her up. "Perhaps," he said. "Would you like to see a big city someday, with tall roofs and many windows?" Claire's eyes lit. "Will there be bread?" she asked. "Yes," he said, "and more soup." She looked at Elise. "Will you be there?" she asked. Elise's heart gave a soft, painful twist. "I do not know yet," she said. Henri appeared behind his sister, clinging to the door frame. "I do not want to go anywhere without Elise," he announced solemnly. "She knows how to find paths." Louis met Elise's gaze over the children's heads. He said nothing, but she heard him anyway. She exhaled slowly. "If I say yes," she murmured, more to herself than to them. My life will never be the same. If I say no, my life will never be the same either. She lifted her chin. Very well, she said. I will go, but on one condition. Lewis's eyes brightened. Name it, he said. So you will not hide me, she said. If anyone asks who I am, you will not say a servant or a nurse or a kindness along the road. You will say my name, clearly. He smiled, the kind of smile that carried both joy and resolve. I swear it, he said. The journey to the capital was nothing like the frantic flight through the forest. This time, they travelled in a plain but sturdy carriage sent by the council, with 2 quiet horses and a driver who never once lost his nerve. The tutor came with them, grumbling about the bump in the road and then telling stories to the children to keep them still. Elise sat by the window, watching fields and villages slide past. Each bend in the road brought them closer to a world she had only ever heard about from others. Are you afraid? Louis asked once, speaking softly so the twins, dozing between them, would not wake. Yes, she said honestly, but I am also curious. That is a good sign, he replied. Fear alone makes people close their eyes. Curiosity keeps them open. And you? She asked. Do you feel like a prince returning home? Or a boy summoned to explain his mischief? He laughed. Both, he admitted. I left in confusion. I return with witnesses. It changes everything. When the city finally appeared on the horizon, it rose not like a fairy tale, but like a mass of roofs, chimneys, towers, and narrow streets. Closer, she smelled bread baking, heard the murmur of crowds, the clatter of wheels on stone. The carriage did not roll through cheering crowds. There were no trumpets. It slipped through a side gate, along a quieter avenue, then into a courtyard enclosed by worn but solid walls. This is one of the smaller residences, the tutor explained to Elise as the door opened. Far from the main square. Less noise, more privacy. Servants appeared, some old, some new. They bowed when Louis stepped down, but their eyes flicked curiously to the children and then to Elise. Louis helped Claire down, then Henry, then turned and offered his hand to Elise, as if she were already accustomed to such courtesy. She took it, feeling the stone under her shoes and the pressure of his fingers around hers. Inside, the rooms were larger than anything she'd known, but not overwhelming. There were rugs, tapestries, polished tables, candles already lit. A woman with kind eyes introduced herself as the housekeeper and showed them to their chambers. You must be tired, she said to Elise. I have prepared a room for you near the children's. A room? Elise repeated. Of my own. Yes, the woman said, unless you prefer another arrangement. No, this is... Elise trailed off, unable to find the right word. Louis stepped closer. Rest, he said. Tomorrow will be full. Today, breathe. The next morning, the council requested his presence. They call it a discussion, the tutor said as he adjusted Louis's coat, which means they will talk at length and hope you agree. Louis straightened his collar. I will listen, he said. And then I will talk. He turned to Elise, who stood by the doorway with Claire clinging to her skirt. Will you be all right? He asked. I will keep her busy, the tutor promised, patting Claire's head, and I will teach Henri how to cheat at cards. You will do no such thing, Louis said, amused. Elise smiled faintly. Go, she told him. I will not wander far. He hesitated just long enough to press her hand once, then left with the tutor at his side. The hours that followed stretched. Elise walked with the children in a small enclosed garden where early flowers pushed through the soil. They chased a cat along the path. They counted birds. The housekeeper brought bread and warm milk and asked shy questions about life in the countryside. Is it very hard? The woman asked. Yes, Elise said, but it is also so clear. You know exactly what stands between you and hunger. In this city it is not so clear, the housekeeper replied. Sometimes hunger wears silk. Later, when the children napped, Elise found herself alone. She wandered the corridors, careful not to lose her way. Voices drifted from behind doors. Laughter, debate. Once she heard her own name in a low whisper. The woman from the forest, someone said. They say she came with him. Surely she will be gone when things settle, another voice replied. These storms pass, people return to their own kind. She stepped back into a shadow until the speakers walked past, not noticing her. Their words stung, but they were not unexpected. She went to a small balcony that overlooked an inner courtyard. The stone was cool under her hands. She looked up at the sky, needing something open above her. She thought of her cabin, of the forest path, of the little clearing that had once been her entire world. Now she stood in the center of a web of power she could barely understand. "Are you regretting your condition?" a voice asked behind her. She turned. The tutor leaned against the doorway, watching her. "Which one?" she asked. "Being here, or asking him to say my name?" "Both," he said calmly. She shook her head. "No," she said. "I regret only that I cannot disappear when I wish. In the forest, if I did not want to be seen, I stepped behind a tree. Here there are no trees. There are curtains," he said. "And sometimes honesty serves better than hiding." "How did it go?" she asked. "The discussion," he sighed. "As expected," he replied. They greeted him with concern and relief. They asked many questions. Some wanted to blame the coachman. Some wanted to blame the men on the road. Some wanted to blame the times, he added with a small snort. No one wished to blame themselves. "And Louis?" she asked. "He listened," the tutor said. "Then he spoke. He told them of the forest, of walking with the children in his arms, of sleeping in a peasant's cabin. He spoke of you." Her heart jolted. "Of me?" she echoed. "Yes," he said. "He did not name you at first, but he spoke of a woman who knew the weight of taxes, who had no shield but her own stubbornness. He said that while he lay under her roof, he understood more than any report had ever taught him. He challenged them to write laws not only for those in chairs, but for those who carried water." "And they listened?" she asked, hardly daring to believe it. "They could not ignore him," the tutor replied. "He is, after all, still the prince." And he returned not demanding punishments, but requesting changes. That unsettled them more than anger would have. "What changes?" she asked. "Less harsh collections," he said. "Clearer records. Men like your collector will have less room to twist fear into profit. It will not fix everything, but it is a beginning." She gripped the balcony rail, dizzy with the thought that words said in her small cabin might now be moving ink on paper in these large rooms. "And now?" she whispered. "Now," the tutor said. "He asks for you." She turned. "For me?" she repeated. "Yes," he said. "He wishes you to be present when he speaks again this afternoon. He has something planned." Her stomach fluttered. "What has he done?" she murmured. The tutor's eyes softened. "Something reckless," he said. "And entirely himself." The great hall they entered later was not the largest in the palace, but it was still more space than Elise had ever seen indoors. Tall windows let in pale light. A long table stood at one end, surrounded by men with serious faces and women in elegant gowns. When she stepped through the door with the tutor and the children, conversations faltered. Heads turned. She felt their eyes slide over her simple dress, her calloused hands, her worn shoes polished as best as the housekeeper could manage. Heat rose to her cheeks. Louis stood near the far end, speaking quietly with a small cluster of councillors. When he saw her, he broke away at once and came toward her, not caring who watched. He bowed slightly in front of everyone, as if she were a guest of honor. "Mademoiselle Elise," he said warmly, "thank you for coming." She inclined her head, unsure how deep to go. Her knees felt unsteady. "You asked for me," she said. "Yes," he replied. "Today I intend to speak of the future. I could not do so honestly if you were not here." The tutor took the twins by the hand and led them to a bench at the side, whispering something that made them giggle quietly. Elise stood beside Louis, feeling the weight of the room press in. One of the older councillors cleared his throat. "Highness," he said, "we are glad of your safe return. We trust we may now turn our attention to restoring calm and decorum." "Calm, certainly," Louis said. "Decorum, perhaps, but not if it means polishing over what is broken." A ripple went through the gathering. He lifted his chin. "When I left this city," he said, his voice clear, "I believed I understood my people. I knew numbers, I knew regions. I knew which parts of the kingdom grumbled louder than others. I thought information was knowledge. I was wrong." He glanced briefly at Elise, then back at the hall. "In the forest, I learned something else," he went on. "I learned what it is to stand with nothing but two small children in your arms and no guarantee of a roof. I learned how fragile lives are when decisions made in rooms like this reach them. I learned that courage often wears rough hands. Several faces shifted, uneasy. My time hidden was not wasted, he continued. It opened my eyes, and it brought me into the home of someone who has come to mean more to me than all the titles you can list beside my name. Murmurs rose. Elise's heart thudded painfully. Louis lifted a hand and the whispers faded. Before we speak of policies, I must speak of her, he said. Her name is Elise. She is not a duchess or a marquise. She is a peasant woman who lived alone in a forest cabin, paying more than her share for bread. She had every reason to close her door to strangers. Instead, she opened it to me and my children, without knowing who we were. She sheltered us, fed us, and scolded me when I deserved it. A few reluctant smiles appeared. She showed me, he said, that nobility has nothing to do with birth and everything to do with character. The older counselor shifted in his seat. Highness, he began carefully, gratitude is admirable. We all respect... Louis cut him off, gently but firmly. I am not finished, he said. He turned to Elise fully, in front of everyone. You asked me not to hide you, he said, his voice soft for her, yet echoing in the hall. You asked that if anyone wanted to know who you were, I would say your name. I am doing more than that. He took a step closer. I have spoken to these men of reforms, he said, of kinder collections, of clearer laws, of ways to ease the weight on those who carry the kingdom on their backs. Some will happen quickly, some will take time, all of them will be fought over. But there is another decision that is mine alone. No council can make it for me. He took a breath. I do not want to face the years ahead without you, he said simply. I do not want to sit in rooms like this, speaking of justice, while hiding the person who taught it to me. The hall seemed to blur at the edges. For a moment, there was only his face and the shaky beat of her own heart. He sank to one knee. Gasps started around them. Someone began to rise, then sat again when the tutor shot him a sharp look. Louis held out his hand, not with a ring yet, but open. Elise, he said, and the name sounded like a promise. You pulled me from the forest. You held my children when I could not stand. You fought with me, laughed with me, and told me truths I did not wish to hear. I love you for all of it. Her vision blurred with tears. I am not offering you a storybook, he continued. Life by my side will be demanding. People will talk. They will question you. They will doubt your place. But if you will have me, I will face them with you. Not as prince to subject, but as man to woman. Will you marry me? Will you stand beside me in whatever this future becomes? Silence fell. Every eye in the hall was on her, but for the first time since entering she did not feel small. She felt seen. She thought of her cabin, of the collector's cruel smile, of the ring on the table, of the tutor's warm kitchen. She thought of the twins calling her name in the dark, trusting her to be there. She thought of Louis, limping but unbowed, choosing truth even when it made him vulnerable. She laughed once, softly, through her tears. You choose strange moments for such questions, she said. He smiled up at her, eyes shining. I am a strange man, he replied. She took a long breath. I am afraid, she said. Afraid of their eyes, of making mistakes at a table like this, of forgetting which spoon to use and hearing them laugh. Use whichever spoon you like, he said. I will do the same, and we will confuse them all. A few startled chuckles rose around the hall. He extended his hand a little more. I cannot promise you an easy life, he said, but I can promise you a shared one. She looked down at him. At the future he held out, not as a command, but as an invitation. You told me not to let you carry things alone, she murmured. It seems unfair to take your heart and then leave you to hold it by yourself. She reached out and placed her hand in his. Yes, she said clearly. I will marry you. The hall erupted. Some gasped in disapproval, others murmured in surprise, but under it all a few clapped, cautiously at first, then with growing warmth. The tutor slapped the table with his palm, grinning like a man half his age. The housekeeper, peeking in from a side door, wiped her eyes with her apron. Louis rose, still holding her hand. He looked almost stunned with joy. You will? He asked, as if he needed to hear it again. Yes, she repeated, unable to stop smiling. But do not expect me to be silent when you are foolish. I would be disappointed if you were, he said. He drew a small box from his coat, opened it, and took out a simple ring, gold but not ornate. Not the heavy crest of his house, but a new circle, smooth and plain. "This was my grandmother's," he said. "She was born with less than you have, and yet she married above her station. She told me once that love, not titles, had made her life worth living. She left this ring for the woman who would remind me of that." His voice shook slightly as he slipped it onto her finger. "It fits," she whispered. "It was made for hands that work," he said softly. "She insisted." Claire broke free from the tutor and ran toward them. "Does this mean Elise is really staying?" the little girl asked, breathless. "Yes," Louis said, scooping her up with his free arm. "If she ever tries to leave now, we will both chase her." Henri arrived next, clutching Elise's skirt. "Can I call her Mama?" he asked, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. Tears spilled over at last. "If she wishes it," Louis said. Elise knelt, ruffling Henri's hair. "If you like," she said, her voice trembling. "I will answer." He threw his arms around her neck. "Mama," he whispered, testing the word like something precious. She closed her eyes for a moment, holding him and Claire close, feeling Louis's hand still wrapped around hers, steady and warm. Around them, the hall slowly adjusted. Some faces remained stiff, others softened. A few looked thoughtful, as if something inside them had shifted. In the months that followed, change came in small, stubborn ways. The notices on village walls grew clearer and less threatening. Collectors were given stricter boundaries. The man who had once stood at Elise's cabin door found his duties reduced and his arrogance checked. He now had to present his accounts to more than one pair of eyes. Bread still had to be earned. Life did not become a story where every poor person woke up rich. But slowly, very slowly, the distance between those who wrote the rules and those who lived under them began to narrow. Elise walked through the palace with more ease. She stumbled sometimes over words, sometimes over polished floors, but she laughed when she did. When she sat at council tables beside Louis, people listened differently. They knew that behind her simple dress stood a forest, a cabin, a story they could not erase. On the day of their wedding, the ceremony was held not in the largest cathedral, but in the courtyard garden where she had once stood alone, gripping the stone. Flowers hung from the railings. Children from the city and the countryside were invited, their faces scrubbed and bright. The tutor walked beside Louis, proud and dry-eyed. Madame Fournier arrived in a dress she had saved for years, muttering that she had never expected to attend such an event. "I still remember your door in the forest," the older woman whispered to Elise as they embraced. "I always told you that trouble would find you. I did not imagine it would wear a crown." "Nor did I," Elise said, laughing. When the vows were spoken, they were simple. "I take you," Louis said, "with your stubbornness, your courage, your sharp tongue, and your soft heart, for all the days we are given." "I take you," Elise replied, her eyes shining, "with your worries, your foolish bravery, your endless papers, and your love for our children, for all the days we are given." They kissed, not as prince and subject, but as two people who had walked through fear together and found something stronger on the other side. The cheer that rose then came not only from courtiers, it came from servants in doorways, from children perched on walls, from people who had slipped in from the street to see with their own eyes whether the stories were true. Later, as the sun lowered and music drifted through the garden, Louis and Elise slipped away for a moment to a quiet balcony. Below, the city hummed. Somewhere far beyond the walls, a small cabin stood empty among trees, its roof aging, its hearth cold. But in his mind, Louis saw it lit by a single candle, warm with the memory of a woman who had opened her door without knowing she was welcoming a prince. He wrapped his arm around her shoulders. "Do you miss it?" he asked softly. "The forest, sometimes," she admitted. "I miss the sound of the wind, the way I could vanish if I wished. But then I look at you, at them." She nodded toward the garden, where Henri and Claire were chasing other children around a fountain, their laughter ringing bright. "And I know this is where I belong now," she finished. "Not because of these walls, because of you, because of what we are trying to do here." He kissed her temple. "I could not do it without you," he said. "You would try," she replied, "and make a mess, and your tutor would scold you." He laughed. "True," he said. "But now when I grow tired, I have somewhere to rest my head that is not a table covered in ink." She leaned into him. "And I," she said, who once thought my life would be nothing but wood and worry, have learned that sometimes in the middle of fear, something unexpected appears. A man carrying 2 sleepy children, a chance to change more than my own hunger. He looked at her, his eyes full. "Do you ever wonder why it was you who found me that day?" he asked. "Out of all the people in all the forests of France." She shook her head. "I do not ask why," she said. "I only know that I did, and that I would choose it again, even with all the fear, because it led me here." He took her hand, entwining their fingers. "Then let us make sure that when our children tell this story," he said, "they speak not only of princes and danger, but of a woman whose courage changed their father's heart, and through it, a piece of their world." "They will," she said, "because we will show them, every day, in how we live." They stood there as the light softened, the city below them restless and alive, the future uncertain but shared. And in that moment, for a woman who had once been alone in a forest, and for a man who had once believed titles would define him, the world felt wide and hopeful and entirely theirs to face together. Thank you so much for listening to this story all the way to the end. We hope it moved you as much as it moved us while telling it. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave us a comment telling us where you're listening from and what you liked the most. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like as a show of support. That really motivates us to keep creating and sharing more stories full of emotion and life lessons. And before we go, we want to remind you that an exciting and heartwarming story recommendation will appear on the final screen. If you'd like to enjoy it, just click on the video. Thank you once again for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.